European leaders say they have agreed to draw up a peace plan for Ukraine following a summit in London on Sunday. Britain and France are leading the efforts with the aim of working together with the United States. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky was in London for the meeting. He said he believes he can salvage his relationship with Donald Trump and that he felt Europe's clear support. Now we can take a listen to exactly what Zelensky had to say after that summit.
We need peace, not endless war. And that is why we say the security guarantees are the key to this. In the near future, all of us in Europe will shape our common positions, the lines we must achieve and the lines we cannot compromise on. These positions will be presented to our partners in the United States.
It's cope to say you can negotiate with the United States and the state. Yeah, but he still has to say so, you know? You have any idea how insane it is that they literally held a NATO summit without the United States? That's what this is, okay? European leaders and NATO officials were present there. Like, just the United States wasn't showing up to this, essentially.
It was a beautiful day in Westminster, yet also one burdened by the weight of history. Amid the symbols of Britain's great power past, a bid to stop the return of a world carved up by strongmen and dictators. The setting, Lancaster House.
Okay, enough with the narrative.
Her country is not regarded as whiter than white on defence spending, though she is trying to increase it. She's also the only European leader who attended Donald Trump's inauguration.
Well, George, you're very welcome.
A key ally in Keir Starmer's drive to get America militarily involved in any ceasefire in Ukraine. And today she didn't
I don't know if I care for this
words.
framing.
I think it is very, very important that we avoid the risk that the West divides. And I think on this, UK and Italy can play an important role in bridge building, let's say.
Yeah.
So you know that I've been also proposing a meeting between...
I'm trying to find framing on this that isn't libcuck shit.
There was much writing
Struggling
on the
a little
summit
bit,
of
I'll be honest
European
with
leaders
you.
in London, how best to forge a path to peace in the war with Russia after the meltdown of relations between Ukraine and the US. Well, now President Zelensky, after those talks, says he is still willing to sign a minerals deal with America, but security guarantees are still necessary. Sir Keir Starmer, hosting the summit, said any peace deal must respect Ukraine's sovereignty, and at the heart of any agreement must be the United States. After the meeting, President Zelensky flew to Sandringham to meet the king, with the two men spending just under an hour together. Well, what do Russians think of all this? We'll be live in Moscow. But
Warning,
first,
flashing
Chris Mason
images.
has our top story.
Early spring sunshine in central London. A few hundred yards from Buckingham Palace, this mansion on the map.
Why does all, like, British media have to do this? Why can't they just, like, talk about the thing that happened?
Lancaster House. This is what the leaders here wanted today to be about.
Everyone wants to, it's like a nature documentary.
Future. The hour is Europe and Canada.
In other words, we've got to find those countries in Europe that are prepared to be a bit more forward-leaning.
And after Friday night's spat in the White House...
Mr. President, can you get things back on track today?
The Prime Minister is working with the French President Emmanuel Macron on a plan to stop the fighting and then discuss it with the United States.
Will Donald Trump ever be a reliable partner, sir? Can you come together and come up with a plan?
Yeah, I don't like all the cutting together. I just want, like, I have, this segment hasn't started, okay? I don't know why it's so difficult to find for American media.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he is ready to sign a minerals deal with the U.S. after the agreement fell through last week following that public dispute between the Ukrainian leader and President Trump inside the Oval Office.
Propagandistic framing. Zelensky never took the deal off the table. He always said the entire time, I'll sign the deal as long as there are security guarantees. That hasn't changed.
On Friday, the comments came after world leaders gathered in London yesterday for a summit on the war in Ukraine as European leaders seek to shore up support for Kyiv. We have team coverage this hour of the fallout from the Trump-Zelensky meeting and the next steps still ahead. Nancy Cortez is standing by this hour outside the White House, but let's start in London, where Ramy Inocencio joins us from just outside the British Parliament. Ramy, what were the main takeaways from this summit?
Chanel, good morning. And yes, America's allies are now pushing for some kind of ceasefire plan for Ukraine in the aftermath of that disastrous White House meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky. Yesterday, we saw heads of state, presidents and prime ministers, about 18 or so, come here to London in potentially was a kind of optical show of strength for Ukraine. For example, we had Emmanuel Macron from France come in, Donald Tusk from Poland, as well as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and the EU President Ursula von der Leyen. And this...
Heard rumors of that. Thank you.
Angela, this afternoon we have French lawmakers who will be debating the security situation in Ukraine. This, of course, comes just days after they were briefed. The heads of each party were briefed by the president about what is going on in Ukraine.
Yeah, this debate is underway in the National Assembly. There will be no vote, but it is an opportunity for parties across the political spectrum to make their voices heard and to put forward their arguments. This because Emmanuel Macron has been talking about France's nuclear deterrent. We should remind our viewers that France within the European Union is the only nuclear power. And Macron has been saying that while France would retain sole sovereign decision-making power on whether ever that any nuclear weapons might be used, he seemed to be suggesting that a discussion should be had with other European partners, envisaging perhaps areas where that might become a bit of a nuclear umbrella, and that European partners would be sheltered under it. Probably suggesting things such as the United States already has nuclear capabilities stationed around Europe. It's highly likely that some of those will be removed in the coming years, and France...
Sheesh. The fact that they're talking about that so openly, you know? I mean, yeah, it's correct. Just like for regular broadcasters to be like, yep, it's pretty much the end of NATO, you know?
Might perhaps replace those nuclear capabilities stationed around Europe. That is a big move. And within the National Assembly, there will be a lot of argument over this. Most clearly and loudly, the National Rally, Marine Le Pen's far-right party, have been saying that any such move would be a national betrayal. Macron has been saying that so often France's own interests would coincide with the European partners' interests anyway. But she said it would be a national betrayal, so we can expect some forceful voices from her MPs in the National Assembly this afternoon. The mainstream right on the issue of Ukraine, because both issues are being discussed, have been saying that it is important that the European Union open discussions with Putin, because otherwise it is just Washington and Putin, and inevitably Europe is sidelined, and that Europe must start talks with Putin, although acknowledging that Putin is a dictator, the head of the mainstream right-wing party saying, but nevertheless, it is in Europe's interest, in Ukraine's interest, to open talks with Putin. And
it's just, it's difficult. I just wonder what form that would take, you know? I'm very, very, very curious.
It's the result of days of diplomacy.
Together we agreed a clear strategy that the United Kingdom, France and our allies will work closely with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting.
After a summit in London, attended by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and leaders mainly from Europe, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the following 4 points had been agreed: to keep military aid flowing into Ukraine and to keep increasing economic pressure on Russia, to ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and a place for Kyiv at the negotiating table at any peace talks. In the event of a peace deal, to boost defensive capabilities.
So this is all conditional. I just wonder how long... I don't know, man. I'm just curious.
Well, it's clear the Russians, they jubilate now, because for the first time since, let's say, more than 20 years, the Americans consider the Russians as an equal partner. And Trump wants to get rid of the problem of Ukraine in order to concentrate, let's call it, on other subjects, especially on China and Southeast Asia.
Leftists need to stop campaigning for zero military spending. Do you mean in Europe? and instead advocate for nationalization to expose our neolib politicians as prioritizing MIC over Ukraine? Sure, yeah. It does kind of seem like there's no path forward for Europe that doesn't involve militarization, so I don't know how relevant the left wing can be in these talks if that's a non-starter for them. Especially because things are still ramping up, man. Apparently today, Zelensky said peace is still very, very far away, and Trump got mad about it.
What do you need to see from President Zelensky to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border. Gave $300 billion and $350 billion more accurately.
Mr. President, is the Ukraine minerals deal now dead, or can it be revived? What's your...
Well, I'll let you know. We're making a speech. You probably heard about it tomorrow night, so I'll let you know tomorrow night. But no, I don't think so. President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying. I gave him sanctions and javelins. That's what I gave him. Thank you very much.
From Andrew Cuomo running for New York City mayor.
Will people who don't respond to the emails be fired?
That reads like a threat. I really do wonder if we're going to provide arms to Russia, man. That would be such a goddamn... I want to say it'd be funny. It'd be a little bit funny. It wouldn't be good.
Now, we should say Germany's outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz also attended that summit in London. Scholz is now leading the government in a caretaker role after his election defeat. And he has emphasized that transatlantic ties are still crucial to Europe's security.
It is key that we all...
I'm genuinely worried Russia will make a break for the Baltics before Europe gets its shit together. The Irish soak, I wouldn't worry too much about that. They have their hands full with Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure that, like, you have to assume that, like, you know, Estonia, Latvia, whatever, they've been in contact, and the agreement with them essentially has been, if they go after us, we're flattening Russia into the world's largest glass, you know, parking lot. I mean, they've probably been talking about this for years. I don't think the Baltics are open, basically. I don't think UK or France have stones to do that. That's not what Trump said. Yeah, but Trump, like, America doesn't control NATO, you know. Like, not in that way, at least. NATO command is NATO command. And you can, as a nation within NATO, act independently of, like, Article 5 declarations or whatever. People are massively overestimating the threat of Russia. Well, it's not really the threat of Russia now, right? It's the threat of Russia and America. We're kind of both in, you know? If nothing else, you guys can expect to see a massive uptick in nuclear proliferation, right? Nukes are going to be in Germany. They're going to be in Finland. They're going to be in Finland. Poland's going to want nukes. Everyone's going to get their nukes. Everyone's going to want like 20 or 30, you know, maybe like half a dozen juicy ICBMs, so any one of them could delete Moscow if they wanted. China's already increased their nuke count in the past few years. Well, yeah, that's China. I'm talking about other NATO countries, you know. I think you're overestimating the support that Trump will give to Russia. I don't think he's going to provide Russia arms. Well, okay, consider what Trump has said and what he's been willing to do with Ukraine. What do you think Trump's going to do if the rest of NATO essentially goes behind our back and starts pushing Ukraine to not accept a ceasefire without a security deal and provides them weapons? At what point do you think Trump's going to say, hold on now, you need to stop providing weapons as well, and they don't? Because him saying he'll cut off the weapons is kind of toothless if Europe is ramping up. He's not just an isolationist. He's pro-Russia. He doesn't just want to, you know, get rid of American involvement. He wants Russia to win. Yeah, we'll see if he pulls out of NATO tomorrow. U.S. Senator joins Elon Musk in calling for withdrawal from NATO. Mike Lee. I don't give a what Mike Lee has to say. This guy's literally like a Twitter groiper. He says anything. He'll say literally anything. Yeah, Elon Musk wants us to leave NATO. I've seen that.
Our understanding that it is our common task to support Ukraine because it's a threat to the security architecture, not just of Europe, but also the world, that Russia invaded its neighbor country just for conquering part of the territory or all the territory. We cannot accept this. And we cannot accept that borders will be changed by force. We will have to find ways to increase our defense spending which is already planned. You know, Germany is spending 2% of its GDP for defense and is now discussing how to continue this increased spending and possibly even more due to NATO capabilities in the next years to come.
He's so boring, he's German, okay? Don't be racist. Slovakia has joined Orban and Trump in pushing against Ukraine. Okay, it's Slovakia. Who gives a f? What, you telling me next Serbia is going to turn against Ukraine? Any other countries whose flag is the Russian flag with like an emblem over it? Estonia? No, Estonia would literally never turn against Ukraine. You just chose a random country because you're unfamiliar with the geopolitics. Estonia would, every single Estonian citizens would kneel and commit seppuku before betraying Ukraine to Russia. Special funds for defense and infrastructure? Yeah. 400 billion euros, 400 to 500 for the infrastructure fund, for the defense fund. And they spelled defense with a C. European MIC skyrocketing. Yep. Speaking of a good opportunity for day trading, imagine if you'd predicted this. I guess a lot of people did. European defense stocks surge. Czech Rheinmetall, their stock has gone insane. Sheesh, no kidding. Up 117% in the past 6 months. What's the point of all this military spending when nukes, i.e. NATO, France, UK, are the only deterrent that matters? Ukraine had a massive army pre-2022. The only reason Ukraine had a big army pre-2022 was because they drafted and recruited a fuck ton of like independent militias that were operating in the east in opposition to the Russian occupation of the Donbass. But yeah, they didn't have, like, prior to that, they didn't have any military at all, basically. Before 2014, they had, like, nobody. Like, they had, their military was 5 guys. It was the restaurant 5 guys. In the hope that Russians would have, like, cardiac arrest on their march westward if they invaded. How'd the war start? You mean the invasion of Ukraine? Ukraine was run by a puppet of the Russian government who won legitimately, kind of, but there were protests against him when he decided to sign an economic deal with Russia rather than open up trade with the EU, which the public didn't want. In the protests against him, he started passing extremely dictatorial laws, which led to worsening protests. People died. Eventually, they stormed the palace and he had to flee to Russia. An interim government was set up, but in the meantime, Russia paid separatists in the east of Ukraine to start seizing local government settlements and essentially like declare secession. Later, Russia seized Crimea, basically with no opposition. Yeah, he walked back on a promise to open up towards Europe. Yeah, he was literally like doing what the Kremlin told him to. All of this has been orchestrated by Russia since the beginning. I don't mean that in like a wow, they're geniuses kind of way. It's like, yeah, obviously, it's just a straightforward read on history. Yeah. And they sent troops with no flags. Yes, Russian troops were in Ukraine in 2014 and have been since. Just rip the damn flags off their fatigues. The world just lets Russia get away with so much shit. Well, there's only so much you can really do, right? Like, again, nuclear power, you know? Anyway, the point of this is that military spending is necessary because there are lots of things that you can and need to do militarily that aren't just build nukes, you know? Just struggling to see a way through as a leftist because I want countries to be able to deter invasions without just giving trillions of taxpayer dollars to the MIC. Yeah, it'd be nice if we didn't live in a capitalist society, but, you know... Japan won't join UN meeting on nuclear weapons ban, citing support for U.S. deterrence. Noting U.S. nuclear deterrence is crucial to the country's security and its participation would send the wrong message. So Japan didn't attend because they didn't want to imply that they're not gracious towards America for benefiting from America's nuclear umbrella. I guess they're afraid of Trump blowing up on them on Truth Social or something. Japan, despite being the only victim of the nuclear attacks, has refused to sign the treaty, saying its goal is not feasible without the participation of any of the nuclear weapon states. They're gonna get it. They want it. Can't really blame them for wanting it. Japan is basically hiding? No, I think it's the opposite. I think that they're beefing up their own military and they're probably pursuing their own nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, Maris has already ruled out a German nuke program. Unfortunately, buddy, I'm not pro-nuclear proliferation, to be clear. Just to be perfectly clear, okay? I'm not in favor of nuclear proliferation. What's happening right now is the obvious consequence of America abandoning its allies and siding with a very nuclear-armed enemy state. Do you think the Russian nukes even still work? Enough of them work for it to be a problem.
Are we ready for a post-NATO Europe? King Charles welcoming Volodymyr Zelensky to his Sandringham estate in images that evoke the days of Charles's grandfather when Britain bravely held down the fort before the U.S. entered World War II. Ever since the push came to shove, would Europe be ready for a post-NATO world? And does Trump siding with Putin bring communication with Russia.
There were actually reports recently that Russia's taking good care of its nukes. So are these reports coming from the same sources that said that they were the strongest military in the world prior to 2022? Like, where are we getting that information from?
Something unseen throughout the Cold War. Today in the France 24 debate, can Europe go it alone? With us from Brussels, he's a former Italian EU affairs minister, today French member of the European Parliament for Emmanuel Macron's Renew. Sandro Gozzi just back from Washington as part of a parliamentary committee that went to the White House and to Capitol Hill. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening, and thanks for inviting me.
Also with us, Anastasia Shapachkina, president of the Eastern Circle's think tank, lecturer in geopolitics at the French Political Science.
I just want to take a look at the tone here. That is quite the rock on your neck.
Craig Capitas, Europe correspondent for Newsmax. How are you?
Good.
You can listen, like, and subscribe to the France 24 debate wherever podcasts are streamed. History will tell how those 49 minutes inside the Oval Office last Friday are remembered. What is for certain is that they are unprecedented.
You're right now not in a very good position.
At the Paris Military School, l'École Militaire, you've been, I guess, speaking with military types and civilian types since Friday.
Yes, of course.
And what are they saying?
But I'm speaking also with my American colleagues, which is all the more interesting, I would say, in that particular moment. That is a turning point in American foreign policy, as Anastasia just mentioned. And what people would say, I mean...
It's that word again, unprecedented? I mean, all this is pretty unprecedented.
Civilian is that we should keep...
The policy, foreign policy.
Newsmax is considered legitimate by France 24. Newsmax has has really widened their operations. Newsmax's publications come across a lot more legitimate than their pundits. Like, if you are watching Newsmax, I feel like it's barely better than OAN. If you're reading Newsmax, they come across like it's kind of like the way you know, like a Fox News article will often contain basically the same information as an article from other broadcasters on a subject, depending on what it's about exactly.
Policy line, if there is any, of Donald Trump and Vance, because it doesn't make sense to try to strike a deal on Ukraine without the...
So many were imposed. Again, is this all just part of political theater? After all, he concluded his statement by saying this will make great television. So
I've just decided that I don't actually give a shit about any of this. I'm moving on. I need a more like concentrated topic. I need like a narrower focus of attention. Bipolar Vosh isn't real. Me when I know what bipolar disorder means.
Des caméras du monde entier, une scène sidérante vendredi soir dans le bureau ovale de la Maison Blanche s'est déroulée sous l'objectif des caméras du monde entier. Une scène sidérante, marquée de brutalité, de volonté d'humiliation, dont le but était de faire plier par la menace le président ukrainien Volodymyr Zelensky pour qu'il se rende aux exigences de ses agresseurs. Le tout résumé en une phrase devant les caméras de la planète, ou bien vous trouvez un accord avec Poutine, ou bien nous vous laissons tomber.
Comprendre les réalités, c'est d'abord admettre que nous ne pouvons pas promettre à l'Ukraine une adhésion à l'OTAN, alors que nous savons que cette option a été une justification à l'agression russe et est clairement rejetée aujourd'hui par les États-Unis. De même, l'adhésion de l'Ukraine à l'Union européenne va incontestablement à l'encontre de nos intérêts. Cette adhésion coûterait des milliards d'euros à la France. Elle créerait une nouvelle distorsion de concurrence sur le marché du travail, impactant fortement.
She really does look as evil and hateful as she is, you know? The way she speaks as well. Honestly, that's fine, man. The more the AfD and Le Pen's parties, the more they define themselves as being opposed to Ukraine, the more likely it is they fall into irrelevancy. As long as Russia remains the threat that it is, as long as the United States grows more obviously evil and in line with Russia, it seems like it's going to pull against them, you know? The AfD does that since 2014 and has gained only since. Yeah, but shit only really got mixed up like 4 days ago. Like now it's not just whether or not Russia Ukraine up. Now it's like the literal end of like the US military umbrella, the end of NATO, like a whole set of things. I mean, it could end up being more popular over time, but it's pretty spooky stuff. Now, Vosh, I think you're big coping there. Unfortunately, German citizens, media, and politicians are very ignorant of foreign politics here. Foreign politics, it's right next door. It's not foreign to you guys the way that it's foreign to us. It's happening right there. But, you know, we'll see, I guess. Okay, it's kind of on your doorstep. Yeah, I see this polling. Perceived relations with Ukraine, friendly versus hostile countries. It's of recent polling where the United States has fallen deep into the negatives here, next to Hungary and Romania in the hostile to Ukraine camp, which is true. Important to note, this issue divides the far right from the conservatives. Yeah, but American conservatives all ended up siding with the far right on this. Like, every single one of them moved over.